President Trump has tested positive for COVID-19 along with First Lady. I'm Garrett Weldon, and this is my channel where we're going to be digging in to the potential impacts in the market, as well as a doctor of physical therapy, let's dig into this virus and how it impacts the respiratory system. There's going to be a market crash. That is for sure. But will it be because President Trump has tested positive for COVID-19? Or will it be just the normal trends, the normal cadence of the stock market as a whole? Let's first go into some of this information. So as you can see here, but just a few hours ago, President Donald Trump tweeted out, "I tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately." And this is important to understand, that there are people that test positive for COVID-19 that really are asymptomatic, meaning they don't express any respiratory systems. And then there are others that have a mild occurrence of COVID-19, which basically says, yeah, they're feeling symptoms, but they're not going to go into the hospital. And so, of course, our hope for President Trump and for First Lady is that the recovery process starts immediately and they're able to quarantine and work through this, as it is with everybody that comes down with COVID-19. However, President Trump is at a heightened risk due to his age and his weight. We'll get in a little bit later on of why weight can be a risk factor for COVID-19. So with those tweets that he had sent out again last night came a letter, "Physician to the President to the White House." And if you can see this, really what it is saying is an official statement dated October 1st, 2020. "I release the following information with the permission of President Donald J. Trump and First Lady. This evening I received confirmation that both President and the First Lady have tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 virus. So now they have COVID-19. The President and First Lady are both well at this time, and they plan to remain at home within the White House during their recovery." So the White House medical team and I will maintain a vigilant watch, and I appreciate the support provided by some of our country's greatest medical professionals and institutions. Rest assured, I expect the President to continue carrying out his duties without disruption while recovering, and I will keep you updated on any future developments. So there you have it. He's tested positive along with First Lady. There's already been changes, of course, to his schedule during these few weeks leading up to the election. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts the vice presidential debate coming up here at the University of Utah. And it's just good to recognize that this has now happened and to start thinking, how is this going to impact the markets? How is this going to impact the markets? Here's my belief. There's going to be a crash. There's always been highs and lows in the market, but to say that we have confidence and we have the ability to say that it's because President Trump has COVID-19 or because a certain event is happening, we're going to be fooling ourselves. I really like Jim Collins, J.L. Collins, and his whole series on stocks and investments. And this is what he has to say when it comes to, is there going to be a market crash? Everybody makes money when the market is rising, but what determines whether it will make you wealthy or leave you bleeding on the side of the road is, that should be IS, what you do during the time it is collapsing. This is why you have to toughen up. Learn to ignore the noise and ride out the storm, adding still more money to your investments as you go. There's a major market crash coming, and there'll be another after that. What wonderful buying opportunities they'll be. He's making the argument that, guess what? Market crashes are not new. To think that you can predict exactly how the financial markets are going to take into consideration one event over the next event, you're fooling yourself. Market crashes are going to come. If you try to time them, you're going to get it taken to school. And so toughen up, learn to ignore the noise and ride out the storm. And even if you continue, even Warren Buffett. So this is when Warren Buffett was talking with Mr. Bogle, who's the founder of Vanguard. It was basically the first index fund that came to market. So I'll have to say this around a market crash. If you're investing on margin or with debt, that's definitely something to be concerned about, and likely is something that you need to reconsider in terms of strategy and in terms of how you're going to place yourself in the market moving forward. Because let's now go back to that quote by Mr. Warren Buffett. He's encouraging for individuals like you and I that a low-cost indexed fund is the most sensible equity investment for the great majority of investors. By periodically investing in an indexed fund, the know-nothing investor, which we should consider ourselves know-nothing investors, can actually outperform most investment professionals. So yes, Trump does have COVID-19. There is a market crash coming, as there has been in the past and as there will be in the future. And you should toughen up and continue to put money into, not margin money, not debt money, money into index funds to ride out the storm and continue to buy when the option is there to buy low and improve and have the gains as, in essence, the market swings back and forth, but as history has suggested, always climbing forward over time. So now into a little more medical, a little more about viruses and about COVID-19. So again, as a doctor of physical therapy, it's good for us to even just understand what COVID-19 is and how it impacts the respiratory system. So a few things, the foundation to lay. This is an image that can help us really understand, at least at a high level, at a basic level, COVID-19. So this represents your nose, this is your mouth, coming down into what is called your trachea, not to be confused with your esophagus. So the esophagus is where the food goes, where your water goes. Your trachea is where your air goes. So for example, when you burp, that's coming out of your stomach. That's coming up your esophagus. When you cough, that's coming up your trachea from your lungs. So then the trachea leads down to your lungs. Now the important thing to recognize about lungs is our body needs oxygen in it to survive, and it needs enough carbon dioxide out of it to survive. So what happens in the lungs is oxygen is coming in as we breathe in, and then it's in essence getting down into the lungs, and there's little cells called alveoli, and that's what was represented in the picture, and we'll jump back to. So those little cells, almost think of them as two chambers. It's not completely accurate, but it's a good way to think of it. And so one of the chambers is almost a vacuum, sucking out of the body carbon dioxide. And the other side is a chamber blowing oxygen into the blood. And so they work back and forth, always balancing, in essence, the carbon dioxide and the oxygen found within our body. So cutting back to that picture. So a virus, and this is the other important concept. A virus is like a half-living mechanism. So think of it this way. Much of our cells almost work like a lock and key. And a lock and key is a good way to think of it. The key kind of tells you what it is and what's going to replicate, and a lock is in the body. And as the key comes in and it turns the lock, bam, you get hair growth. It turns the lock and your fingernails grow. And it turns the lock and it replicates itself, and you have skin cells that grow. And that's how the cells of our body, in essence, are structured, is kind of in this lock and key. They can recreate themselves. They can add, in essence, and replicate themselves. A virus is just the key. And it can do nothing. It can do nothing on its own. And in fact, if it can't find a lock quick enough, it'll die. So in essence, a virus is searching for a lock, and the locks are found within your body. And it so happens that COVID-19 is a respiratory virus, which means that it enters your body through your nose, through your mouth, and goes down into your lungs. And in essence, once there, it finds a lock and twists itself inside that lock and begins to replicate. And it's in that replicating fashion, an easy way to think of it is it produces frequently a type of swelling or a type of inflammation that occurs at the place that it's replicating, which is in the lungs. And this liquid that it starts producing, or this inflammation, is let's call it sticky. It's kind of like bubbles or dish soap, and that ends up getting put over the lining of the lungs. Now go back to the idea that each of these little bubbles are like a two-way street. One's a vacuum kind of sucking up carbon dioxide, and the other's a blower pushing in oxygen. And as soon as you get the liquid covering those, again, the exchange of gases no longer can occur. A good thought of it is a bubble. So you put the bubble wand into the container with the soap, and as you pull the wand out and you go to blow it, the air doesn't pass through, right? You can blow and the air doesn't escape to the other side. It fills the bubble. And that's what's happening with COVID-19, is it gets in these lungs and it causes, in essence, this inflammation to occur. And as we're trying to exchange gases, instead of being able to suck up carbon dioxide or blow out oxygen, it just gets stuck inside this liquid, as if you're blowing a bubble. And when it starts to get stuck inside this liquid, it starts to, in essence, create a decreased ability to breathe. And with that decreased ability to breathe, eventually you get acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is what happens with COVID-19 and can ultimately lead to death. So why is being overweight a risk factor? For many, many reasons. Many of them are that with being overweight, you likely have other complications in other systems of your body. But a good way to think of it, if you've ever laid on the ground and put like a heavy weight, or say a 45-pound weight, or a milk jug, or a rice bag, or anything on top of your chest, it's harder to breathe. So just by nature of having more weight on your body, it makes it more difficult for your lungs to expand and for your lungs to change and exchange gas. And the other thing to think of, if you are overweight, which is why they say Donald Trump is at a heightened risk, is because you're just generally deconditioned through this region, which is your upper body region that promotes respiration. So this again is a review of President Trump. Yes, he has COVID-19. 2, there's going to be a market crash. Toughen up, keep investing, get in index funds, and let's ride through this, whether it's caused by President Trump having COVID-19 or undoubtedly something else here in the future. And then a remembrance of what COVID-19 is, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and COVID-19 the disease, and a little overview of the virus and, in essence, how it impacts the respiratory system. So if this was helpful to you, consider subscribing below and follow me as we continue to explore finances and financial